Welcome back, 7th and 8th grade. Happy Monday. Today is Monday, May 4th, and we are continuing in our Unit 5 study on human development. So we are going to get started with just some answers to your previous lesson review questions, which you should have emailed to me by now. So at this time, if you want to just pause, get that out, I want to make sure that you have the correct answers. Based off of the last online test that you guys took, it was clear to me that some of you maybe not correcting these and not getting the correct answers, as many of the test questions, specifically like the short answer questions that appeared on that previous assessment, came directly from your lesson review questions, which I have been diligently giving you the correct answers to. So it is important at this time that you are correcting your answers to those questions. Make sure you have the right info, because that benefits you when you do an assessment later if it's open book, which, given the situation that we're in, is likely for the remainder of the year. Okay, so please pause this and get that out, and then I'm going to read the correct answers, and you can correct as needed. All right, number 1 said, what are hormones and where are they made? The correct answer would be that hormones are chemicals that carry information from one part of an organism to another. They are made in the glands of the endocrine system. Okay, so you have many glands, and each of those glands produce different types of hormones, which then travel in the bloodstream to different parts of your body. Number 2, which gland controls the other endocrine glands and has the greatest effect on the body? The correct answer to that is going to be the pituitary gland. That particular gland has the most effect. It's kind of like the control center, or the brain, or the mastermind of the endocrine system, and it tells most of the other glands what it needs to do, or what those glands should be doing in the body. And number 3, list the endocrine glands and the functions of each. So this is the last question for this, but it's a very long one, so bear with me. We're going to go through all of the endocrine glands and the function of each gland. So the first gland is the pituitary gland, as we just mentioned in number 2. And the pituitary gland produces the most hormones. It's the master gland that directs the other glands. The next gland is the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the link between the endocrine and the nervous system and signals the body to begin puberty. The next gland is the thyroid gland, which produces a hormone that regulates the metabolic rate and is essential for proper growth and maturity. On top of the thyroid gland, you have the 4 parathyroid glands, and those produce a hormone that regulates calcium levels in the blood. Next, we have the adrenal glands. Remember, those are the 2 glands that sit on top of the kidney. And the adrenal glands produce adrenaline, which responds to emotional excitement, stress, exercise, and injury. Next, we have the pancreas, which, although is an endocrine gland, is also part of the digestive system. The pancreas produces insulin, which is the hormone that regulates the transport of sugar molecules into body cells. Next, we have your thymus. Remember, that's the butterfly-shaped organ that's up near your sternum. And this produces a hormone important in the development of the immune system. Then you have your pineal gland, or pineal body, as the next endocrine gland. That's in your brain, and it produces a hormone that seems to inhibit the development of the reproductive system and also plays a role in your sleep-wake cycles. Then we have the ovaries in females only, and those produce both estrogen and progesterone, which affect the development and function of the female reproductive system. And then in males only, you have the testes, which produce testosterone. But bearing in mind, women also have testosterone in their bodies, even though they lack testes. And testosterone, affects muscle mass development, hair growth, voice changes, and the development of sperm production in the male reproductive organs. All right, so make sure that you got all those. They're also on the slides from the previous video where we covered all of those glands, but make sure that you are familiar with all of the endocrine glands and the major function of each. All right. And so we are actually going to be skipping the next lesson, which is lesson 5.42 on reproduction and development at this time. It may be something that we revisit later, but we are going to be skipping it for the time being. So you are not responsible for the material contained on pages 289 to 295 of your textbook. All right? Make sure you know that. You are not responsible for that material. We are skipping over it and heading to the next section, which is 5.4.3, talking about biological rhythms. So, as we venture into this, I have to wonder if maybe you're a morning person. Are you really crabby in the morning? Or maybe you're a morning person and you just hop out of bed in a good mood and you're ready to take on the day. Or maybe you're someone who finds that you get a lot of energy or a second wind in the evening hours and you'd rather stay up really late and then sleep in really late. Or maybe you've traveled either internationally or just across the country into a different time zone and you've experienced jet lag from being kind of messed up on a different time zone where you're hours ahead or behind. All of these things are affected by what we call your biological rhythms. And it's kind of like an internal clock, all right? And so, your body follows a rhythm that tells it when to be awake, when to sleep, when to eat, when to be energetic, when to be calm. And you may not be consciously aware of this, but the hormones in your body, as well as your brain, all of these are working together to keep this rhythm. So, a rhythm then is just simply a pattern that occurs over and over. And so, this is a pattern that occurs in your body daily, around the clock. And it's going to continue, a set pattern. Like you don't decide to go to bed at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday and sleep till 9 p.m. and get up and then just start your day at 9. Typically, we follow a regular schedule where most of us sleep through the night hours and are awake during the day hours, all right? And this whole concept does not just apply to humans, so that's an important distinction, but it also applies to many of the other creatures that God has created on the earth, and many different animals and organisms and plants even have their own biological rhythm. And so most scientists agree that these rhythms that we as organisms experience are regulated by a biological clock inside each individual organism. And that clock may differ between different organisms, but humans in general share a similar biological clock, and different animals of different species share a similar biological clock. And all we mean by a biological clock is it's an inner mechanism that's regulating your biological rhythm. And it's created by God inside plants, animals, even bacteria like microorganisms and viruses to allow them to take advantage, basically, of good environmental conditions. What do I mean by good environmental conditions? I mean, we're taking advantage of the best that God has to offer. So humans, we're awake during the day when the sun is shining and we can get nutrients from the sun. We can be productive. Our moods tend to be a little bit more elevated when the sun is shining. You may have experienced that on some of the rainy days we've had lately. But we are greatly affected by what's going on in the world outside of us and in our environment. And so God's design of our environmental clock allows us to make the use of the best that God has to offer for us as humans and what's advantageous or helpful to our bodies as humans. Okay? And most organisms have a biological clock that regulates something we call circadian rhythms. You may have heard of this before. If not, then pay attention. Circadian rhythms are regular rhythms of growth and activity that occur, in humans at least, on approximately 24-hour cycles. So our biological clocks kind of run how we run our society and how the world runs their society on that 24-hour clock cycle. Looking at plants, for a break from humans, plants, some bloom in the morning hours but then close at dusk. Or some may spread leaves during the day but not at night. Biological clocks even tell pollinating organisms like bees when to pollinate the plants. So these circadian rhythms of the plants or of humans are a constant 24-hour cycle. So these plants, say the ones that bloom in the morning hours but close at dusk, every morning you can expect that plant's circadian rhythm is going to tell it to bloom, and at night it's going to close, and then the next day bloom and close, and that's going to repeat around the clock on a 24-hour cycle, similar to our sleep-wake cycles in humans. Okay, and so yes, we too as humans have what's called a circadian rhythm. Our sleep patterns are circadian rhythms, and throughout your body, various things change throughout the day as a result of these circadian rhythms. So things like your respiration or your breathing rate are affected by your circadian rhythms. Your heart rate changes throughout the day based off your circadian rhythms. Tissue cell growth, how your tissues multiply, replace themselves, heal, all of those things are affected by your circadian rhythm. And as we just wrapped up talking about the endocrine system, the secretion of hormones in your body are affected greatly by your circadian rhythms. If you go back and we talked about the pineal body or the pineal gland in your brain. We said that plays a role in your sleep-wake cycle. That one of the hormones produced by your pineal gland is melatonin. You may have heard of melatonin because it's like the sleepy hormone. It's what helps us get drowsy at night so that we're able to fall asleep. And so your pineal gland is affected by the light of the day and your circadian rhythms to say, hey, wait a minute, it's getting dark out. And because it's getting dark out, it must be getting time to sleep. And so your circadian rhythm works together. And as your eyes take in less light from daylight, your pineal body or your pineal gland secretes more melatonin to make you sleepy. Conversely, you have cortisol in your, it's a hormone in your body, which is what's responsible for waking us up in the morning. And ideally, our cortisol levels should rise about an hour or two before we wake up. And it's that gradual rise that finally pulls us out of that sleep. And at the same time, melatonin goes down while cortisol goes up to wake us up. So again, this is all examples of how our circadian rhythms, as well as the day and daylight and darkness outside, all affect various aspects of our health, and especially the hormones. And now in general, most humans, maybe you've been getting more, maybe you've been getting less, hopefully more since we're in quarantine, but in general, we get about 8 hours of sleep a night and are awake for roughly 16 hours. Again, there's obviously variation in that. Some of us like to sleep 10 or 11 hours. That's me. I like my sleep. But in general, as a whole, the majority of humans operate kind of on an 8 to 16 hour cycle. And while awake, our mental and our physical functions of our body are much more active and productive. We want them to be. We want our mind to be sharp. We want to be able to do schoolwork and our jobs and that sort of thing. But at night, when we're sleeping, those things are going to be slowed down by our circadian rhythm so that we can turn our brains off and get to sleep and get the rest and rejuvenation that we need. Okay? Other things like, for example, you make more white blood cells while you are awake than you're sleeping. So even the production of different molecules in your body is affected by your circadian rhythms. Right? Some organisms experience what's called annual rhythms. You can think of this like the migrating birds or hibernating bears. Their circadian rhythms are not like ours. They're not a 24-hour cycle like humans and many plants and animals. Instead, they're annual. So their circadian rhythm is through the entire year. And that dictates when they hibernate, that dictates when they come out of hibernation, or when the birds need to migrate south to different areas. Humans do not experience annual rhythms, but we do experience monthly rhythms. So you can think of monthly rhythms like female menstruation. So females' reproductive hormones are on a monthly rhythm or a monthly biological clock, which produces a period every month. And if you didn't know, fun fact, research actually shows that men too follow monthly cycles in a different way, obviously, than females do, because females are responsible for bearing children in God's design. But men actually may experience monthly fluctuations in cycles in things like their weight, their physical strength, the rate that their beard grows, and different factors. So may not be as obvious as a female's monthly rhythm, but still, interesting fact, men experience a similar thing. All right, and so this is an image similar to one that you can find in your textbook, but this is just kind of showing you here at midnight. Actually, let's start over here. So let's start at noon. So this is noontime, you're eating lunch, whatever. Right around here, most scientists agree, 1, 2 o'clock, you have your best coordination, you have your fastest reaction time, greatest cardiovascular efficiency and muscle strength, your highest blood pressure occurs around this time, highest body temperature. But then as we start to approach, you get melatonin secretion, like I just talked about, which makes you sleepy. Around 2 a.m., you're in your deepest, darkest sleep. and you at 4 a.m. roughly hit your lowest body temperature. A low body temperature is critical to a good night's sleep. And then as the morning comes around here, 6 a.m., you're getting a sharp blood pressure rise and your melatonin secretion stops. And what they don't have in here is what I said, your cortisol levels actually increase in this time frame as well. And that wakes you up so that by 10 a.m., you're at high alert, or you should be. And so this is just kind of an overall, this is not exactly pinpoint. At exactly noon, this does not just happen. At exactly 7:30 in the morning, melatonin secretion does not just stop. It's just kind of a ballpark example to show you that this is a rhythm that is going on around the clock. And yeah, like there is variation between different people, but in general, if we are taking care of ourselves and are healthy, we all follow a very similar biological rhythm. And this is just another image just to show you here. This is what your cortisol levels that wake you up should look like. Early in the morning hours here, you should see a huge spike in that, and that's what's going to lull you out of your sleep and into bed. But as the day goes on, you want your cortisol levels to gradually decline throughout the day. You do need some energy in here, so we still have some cortisol flowing through, but it's gradually declining so that by the time you're getting into sleep time and bedtime, it's really low and your brain can relax and you can get that rejuvenating sleep you need. All right? And so that's the end of the biological rhythms section. It was a very short section, so we did it all in one video. Your homework tonight is going to be to read the section. It's just pages 296 to 298, so 2 short pages. And then you're going to watch the linked video that I post below here. And then you need to complete your lesson review questions 5.4.3 and email those to me as soon as you complete those. All right? And with that, I will just see you back on Wednesday to go over the answers to those lesson review questions and for another video lesson.